The world really believes in you so much that they want to give you everything they possibly can. If you watch the movies and you see what it is, it's about makeup, it's about good food, it's about doing whatever you want anytime you feel like it. There is nothing that should hold you back because of why? Because it is about you. There's one problem with that. In the movies, they all end right. Even when you end up in bed with somebody else or whatever it is. But in reality, that is a very different story. There is crying, there are STDs, there are unwanted pregnancies, there are many different things. That is the aftermath of the things that the world encourages you to do to make you happy, that cause such consequences that it does not feel good afterwards. And today, I want to share with you, with a special guest, Rebecca Ondov, that it does not have to go that way. Why do we wait till it is too late? Why don't we deal with the problem before it even starts, especially for our teens? With me is Rebecca Ondov today, and I know when you get to know this horse lady, that when you start hearing about her, that you will start seeing that God has a different plan. Rebecca, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Barb. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. Now, you have been with horses most of your life. You live in Montana. You've dealt with grizzly bears. You've dealt with all kinds of crazy stuff, big fires. But to me, I think what touched me the most was not the grizzly bears or those fires, but when you purchased your new horse, Dancer. Now, when somebody buys or purchases a horse, tell me a little bit, what is the process usually in that?
Well, there's a lot of skepticism because people try to pass off broken horses as healthy horses. So the best thing to do is to have a horse vet checked. And so you take it to the vet clinic and have them check it, or the vet comes out to the stables where you're buying the horse. You also want to buy from a reputable trainer. And I did both of those things with Dancer. The first thing with Dancer is I bought her from a reputable trainer. I did ask him to have her vet checked when I was there. However, when I went to pick her up, he said he had already had her vet checked and showed me the paperwork, which I looked at the paperwork and I had a little check in my spirit about that, but I didn't follow up on it because I was so excited about the purchase. And so I stuffed that feeling, which I later learned was the Holy Spirit telling me, don't do this.
Now, how do you know? Because people want to say, how did you know that was God? How did you know that was the Holy Spirit saying, you're about to make a mistake?
It's that still small voice. God never overpowers you. He's a gentleman. So he doesn't come in like a bulldozer and make you do something, but he suggests. And I always kind of get it in my spirit that it's a still small voice saying, there's something wrong here. Maybe a little queasy feeling with it. Mm-hmm. But I ignored it. It wasn't strong enough to follow up on for where my emotions were, and I wasn't listening to God the way I should have been.
So let me guess, you bought the horse.
Yes, I did.
And then what happened?
Well, we had a lot of forest fires that year in Montana, so I wasn't able to ride her that summer because it was too smoky. So I started riding her the following spring, and she kept coming in lame. Well, in the meantime, she also wasn't a very nice horse. She was so mean to my other horses, I wasn't sure I was going to keep her. Well, by this spring, I decided that I had to keep her because she had fallen in love with one of my horses that I had owned for 25 years, who had never cared for another horse and had fallen madly in love with her. And this was his new girlfriend. And they licked the salt block together. They ate the same pieces of grass together.
And is that unusual?
It's very unusual that they're that close that quickly. It was like they were married.
Oh,
it was just amazing. So the next spring when I started riding her and she kept coming in lame, I was also at the point where I was turning in the paperwork to purchase her, get the registration. I should say purchase the registration.
Now, don't you get a registration usually the moment that you buy the horse?
You do, but this was through the Tennessee Walker Association. And I didn't want to spend the money to have her registered if I wasn't going to keep her, if I was just going to sell her again.
So you registered her, and then your eyes were opened, I assume?
Yes, what happened is the paperwork had been switched at the Tennessee Walker Horse Registry. And so they sent me back the paperwork, and they said, you have to go back to the person who signed the last paperwork and redo with the new forms. Well, it wasn't the trainer that had sold her to me, because he hadn't put the registration in his name either. I went back to the person before him, and he agreed to meet me and sign the paperwork, and he said, how's she working out? And I said, well, she keeps on coming in lame. I can't figure out what's wrong, and all I'm doing is walking. I'm not doing anything, no trotting, no galloping, nothing. And he said, you mean to tell me you're riding her? And I said, yes. And he said, she had a broken hind leg.
Oh no.
So that means that she's unusable. And I was totally shocked because of the vet check.
But how is that possible? Didn't the vet catch that? Wouldn't that be looked over and noticed?
There's two different things the trainer could have done. He could have substituted another horse that looks like her and had that horse go through the vet check because he had a stable full of horses. Or he could have drugged her so she wasn't in pain.
Wow. You were cheated on. Now,
I was.
You know, I've been cheated on in life, but not like that. And when that happens, inside is instant anger. How dare you? I don't deserve this. You know, and instant we separate ourselves from God because we are ticked and feel we have a right to it.
Yes.
Was this you?
Yes, very much so. And it was even more intense because I have a living being that's involved. So I wasn't the only one cheated on, but that horse was cheated on as well, because had I pursued riding her, we could have totally blown out her whole leg and she would have busted her leg right underneath me.
Wow, wow.
So what potentially could have happened to her was what infuriated me as much as me being swindled out of a lot of money.
Wow, wow. So how do you know, now what is next? Because you don't want this guy or girl, whoever it was, do this to other people. You want to actually protect other buyers, and at the same time, you don't want it to be revenge. What did God tell you to do?
Well, God told me that I was to take all the paperwork back to the gentleman who signed off for the registration, because he told me that he had told the trainer that that horse had a broken leg when he sold it to the trainer. He had witnesses to the effect, and so I went and got those witnesses and statements from them. I took all the veterinary paperwork that I got, and I took it to the veterinarian who had vet checked her as clean. And I walked in the door and I said, I just want to have a couple moments of your time. I said, I'm not going to do any legal prosecution to you, but I do want you to know that this trainer needs to be stopped. And this is what he did to you. You could lose your practice over it.
Did you have peace while you were taking care of this?
Yes.
So you knew it was not going against God in a revenge, but it went completely in a way that would honor God. And you know, often when people cheat us or do things wrong to us, we feel like we have the right to get even. And yet, can something good get out of something really, really bad? Stay tuned. Would you like to feel empowered by God? I just learned that recently. And to start being in the presence of the Lord, to get to know Him, whom He is, and for Him to really start showing Himself to you is all about being in His presence. We want to help you. We want to teach you what God has taught us that He wants to teach you. We're doing events, we're doing classes, we're doing podcasts, and we want to help you. Go to BarbTV.org. We'll help you. We're talking about being cheated on and what is right and what is wrong. And usually what happens is once we have been wronged, that our self-worth basically goes down the tube anyways, because we start reacting in a way that has nothing to do with God. And Rebecca was cheated on being sold a horse that had a broken leg before. How do you overcome, and how can you make something wrong out of something right, even if God told you not to do that? So you have a horse that has a broken leg, everything went wrong. Then you start saying, oh God, I get it, you know, this was a mistake. But then life moves on. Now you have an extra horse you have to feed, you have to pasture, you have to take care of, that your other horse falls in love with. Now what? So what did you do?
Well, I decided after praying about it that I was to keep her. And one day when I was driving into town, I went through a pasture that had a bunch of colts playing. And I thought, I've always wanted to raise my own mule. So maybe what I'll do is I'll breed Dancer and get a mule. So I made an appointment to bring her into the vet. And the crazy thing is it was God's timing. God said when I was driving past the vet clinic to stop in there that day and see if he had an appointment. My vet usually is booked 3 weeks out. He had an appointment that afternoon. I took her in there and I had 3 days to breed her before she was done for a year.
Wow, you know, that sounds kind of to human people kind of funny. So, but you had 3 days to breed her. So
3 days.
Did you get her?
Yes, we did get her bred, and she took, and I got the most marvelous experience because I raised my own mule, but I raised her from conception. Most people take a mule and they imprint them once they're born, but I started talking to that baby when it was in the womb, and the baby would respond to me.
How did it respond? How did you know that it could hear you?
It's so amazing. I started talking into Mama's belly a couple times a day from the time she was pregnant, and God told me what her name was. God told me the baby's name was Wind Dancer. He told me it was a girl. And I also used to sing a little song to her every day. And so I put my head into Mama's belly and I'd talk to it. 3 weeks into the pregnancy, you're supposed to take it in, the mare in, and have an ultrasound done to see if the baby's pregnant.
The baby's pregnant or
Is
the
it
mama's pregnant?
I'm
Okay.
sorry. So make sure Mama's pregnant. And I put my ear in and into her belly, and I was just talking and singing, and that little baby kicked me.
So you knew she
So
was pregnant.
I knew she was pregnant. And that baby, every time I would talk into the belly, I'd walk over and I wouldn't say anything, I'd be quiet, but as soon as I started talking, the baby would start kicking.
Wow.
And it did that until I was at the guest ranch, right? 3 weeks before the baby was born. I would be like a Pied Piper.
Now, did Mama put up with you with all of that? Because, you know, have you ever tried to walk up in a grocery store to a woman that is pregnant and say, let me feel your belly? They don't like that so well.
No, they don't.
So how did Dancer put up with that?
Well, she put up with it as long as I gave her attention. But when I started focusing more on the baby than her, she started to walk away and not let me talk to her until I figured out I can't ignore her. She's a part of the whole thing too.
Right.
But she loved it. She loved being the center of attention then at the guest ranch when the kids would come down and I'd put 4 kids on either side of her and they'd put their heads into her belly. And I'd tell them, be quiet, can't say anything until till I speak. And I'd come over and I'd say, hi, Wind Dancer. And the baby would just start thrashing her feet and the kids would squeal and
The kids could feel it too.
They
now,
could.
what is that like? Because it shows you that, you know, a baby is not a blob. It shows you it is alive and it's able to respond to the outside world. And that must have made an impact on you.
It made a huge impact on me to realize that we were created from the moment of conception, specially by a God who loves us. And it made it more real, and I was able to share that with the kids, that God determined your DNA before you were even born. You're a boy or a girl, your color of your hair, your everything about you. And He has a special assignment and purpose for each individual.
Wow.
That's what's so amazing.
It gives you worth.
It does.
It gives you full worth. God has created specifically you for something, a purpose that He put you on earth for, and He wants to establish that to you.
That's
What do you
right.
think nowadays gets in the way of that word, especially with maybe like teen girls?
I think the biggest thing is that women are so exploited in so many different ways. Everything from pornography to sex trafficking, abortions, all kinds of ways women are exploited in our society. And so if they have low sense of worth or a low sense of value, what happens is they latch onto that. They accept the lies of the enemy. And if they could only get a grasp of who they were created to be, that they're created special by God with a purpose, and that He loves them so much.
Tell me some of the lies of the enemy that you're talking about. What are these lies like?
Oh, they could be something like, I'm not worth anything, or you're not good enough, or you're ugly, or they don't like me, or oh my gosh, the list goes on and on and on. Nobody will ever care for me. My parents don't like me. I'm stupid. The lies go on.
And on and on. And I've also heard that often, you know, I'm not sure if it's true, but I believe there is truth to it. There's a lot of single households now. And the moment you have the parents apart, even if they care for the children, that causes a, what would I call it, a wall between them that will cause that worry to go down too. They blame themselves. They blame that it's their fault. They struggle with their identity, who they are and who they belong to more. Do you think that makes an impact on our world today?
I think it makes a huge impact. I think if we go back to the foundation that God created us in His image, and we stay there, and we don't let anything deter us from that, that is probably the most powerful thing, because if you're created in the image of God, you're empowered to do everything God has for you to do. You have a special assignment. You have a gift to give the world. It's not what you become from taking from the world. It's what you become from giving to the world. And a good illustration of that is Mother Teresa. Yeah. You have a woman who gave her all. And her life was focused on giving from who God made her. And she was the woman of love.
And she knew her purpose.
She knew her purpose.
But let's get back to Dancer.
Okay.
Dancer is pregnant. You are getting ready for birth. The birthing room, the pasture, I imagine, is getting put together. You are ready for this baby to be born. How long is a horse usually pregnant?
11 months and 2 days.
11 months. So you get the horse pregnant, you're excited about it, and then you get in for the biggest surprise of your life.
Yes. Well, first she was born early. And I think it's because her leg was broken. But when that baby was born, mule babies normally, you can't catch them for 2 weeks. Once they get to their feet, they stand up right away when they're ready to stand up, not like a horse that stands up and falls over and stands up and falls over. But you can't catch them. They're wild. So I went down to the pasture when I heard she was born, and I went over to the mom, and I was talking to the mom. I'm going to cry. And when Dancer came next to my leg and leaned against me and said hello, and that's just not what mules do.
Wow.
But she knew, and I thought, that's like us. We know God's voice.
I know, and I'm going to hold you right there.
Okay.
You're probably starting to think right now, what does horses have to do with word of people? And I am going to show you that in just a minute. You want to hear the rest of this. Stay tuned.
BarbTV is building on a fantastic community of followers who love the show. Follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/BarbTV.
When Rebecca Ondov was told by God to write, she did not want to do it. And then yet her horse stories, as you can just even imagine, do need to be told, especially to girls. They love horses. When she applied for doing this writer's workshop in 1992, only 13 out of 5,200 applications were accepted, and she was one of them. What came out of what she did not want to do when she obeyed God turned around into absolutely something amazing. Rebecca, you are an author today. Why in the world were you fighting God to write?
Because I didn't want to write. I was working from the saddle in the mountains doing my dream job. And I'm a very private person. Not that I do anything wrong, but I just like being by myself in the woods. And when God told me to write, I said, forget it. You don't know who I am. Now I'm telling my Creator, you don't know who I am. And I said, I'm not going to do it. And it took almost 3 months of him talking to my spirit. And finally, he must have gotten a megaphone. And he put it right into my spirit, and he said, write a manuscript. And so I did. The night that it was due, I posted it. And I posted it with, here you go, God. Don't ask me to write again.
And here you have your book today, Great Horse Stories, Top Girls. And isn't this about Dancer?
It is.
So tell me about your book. What is this all about?
It's stories, inspirational stories for girls about horses of true life decisions that I made. Some of them are tough, some of them are special. The biggest thing is that the girls understand who God created them to be, that they're special, that He created them with a worth. And there's no other creation like them.
And
They're
isn't that
unique.
word what we just talked about? The world is teaching us do whatever you want, there are no consequences.
Yes.
And yet God is saying, do it my way and you'll be blessed and have life in abundance. Now, when I read your book, and okay, it's for teens, but I read it. And when I read your book, it's not just talking about Dancer, the beginning of the ending, the whole story of what happened that we talked about. But you have in each chapter a section how God loves the girls, can connect with them, and right there in applicable way will actually really touch them. But that also the last ending, you each time give us a question about horses.
Yes.
And we learned something. Can you tell me one of those right now?
Oh, one of them is a question about what's the name of the horse that, let's see, he could tie a rope, shoot a gun, climb the stairs in the hospital, and he also won a bunch of movie star awards. And it's Trigger, it's Roy Rogers' horse.
Wow.
And so I have little tidbits about different horses. Some of them might be about herd mares, their importance of, and the fun thing about a herd mare is that who a woman is she's in charge of her family. And she's a very, very important person. So the whole book is geared towards teaching women that they have value.
Wow.
It's not what society is teaching us, that we don't have value and that we're to be used.
And you're trying to teach them before it goes wrong.
Correct.
Before they hit the world that just sucks them in and makes such an impact on where is all this passion coming from?
I believe it's coming from the fact that most girls are not raised with a sense of value that they're created by God. And so they're so unsure. You get through your teen years and everything is Hollywood. Well, sorry, nobody's going to look like Hollywood. The stars don't even look like Hollywood when they're not on the screen.
Now, Rebecca, just a question real quick, because often what happens, it is when you are impacted yourself in such a way that you did not have that worth, that the passion becomes so real, you want to share that with the world. So I know I'm putting you on the spot right now, but what was it for you? Because this goes deeper.
It does. For me, I had a lot of different tumultuous situations through my childhood that were hard to deal with, not unlike what a lot of kids go through today. But I believe that my situation, no matter how bad or how good it was, it's no different than anybody else's. Nobody can say theirs is worse. The thing is, we've got to have the girls founded and grounded in God's word and who they are. Wow. So that they can respond no matter what the circumstance is.
Wow. If they want to connect with you, because you're real, you're sincere, and you're a horse girl. So if people wants to have more information about you or about the book or about Dancer, where can they get a hold of you?
They can go to my website, which is montanahorsegal.com. Or if you're in my book, it's also RebeccaOndov.com. They can find me on Amazon.com. Just bring up the title of the book.
Wow. Thank you so much for coming. I'm going to give you my book, Ransomed.
Oh, thank you. And thank
Loving
you for having
yourself
me.
from the inside in, and that is what you did with Baby Dancer.
Yes.
That was what it was all about. Thank you so much for coming to the show.
Thank you.
And then, does the Bible talk about this? Does he talk about how important, how valuable you are to God? And the answer is, of course, yes. So let me show you what it says in Psalm 139. And I'm not going to read the whole psalm for the sake of time, but listen to the words and just imagine yourself being this person that God is talking about right now. For you informed my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. Isn't that what Dancer was all about? I will give thanks to you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Wonderful are your works, and my soul knows it very, very well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret and skillfully wrought in the depths of the earth. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, not a blob, a baby, a real living being. And in your book were all written. Let me repeat that. Your eyes have seen my unformed substance, and in your book were all written. The days that were ordained for me, that includes you. When as yet there was not one of them, how precious also are your thoughts to me, oh God. And I can see some of you thinking right now, that is not me. God, you know what I've done. I am not that person. Well, I can tell you one thing. If God says you are, and you are wrong. I would call that phony baloney. It is real. When God thinks about you, he sees who you really are, but he also sees what you can be. And he believes that you have worth, that you have beauty, and that you matter. How precious also are your thoughts to me, O God. How vast is the sum of them. If I should count them, they would outnumber the sand. When I awake, I am still with you. God believes in you and loves you so much. He does not want to leave you where you're at. And unlike the world, what God wants to give to you is worth, peace, and you mean so much to God that he sent his son, Jesus Christ, to die on a cross to give you a second chance to receive that peace and to live in that worth. And if you have been at a point that you have lost that, and that it's no longer part of you, you just need to know that God is going to help you to turn that around if you let him. It starts in the heart. So what I'm asking you right now, are you willing to ask God to come into your life? All you have to do is say, Lord, come into my heart. I've made a mistake. Yes, I believe in Jesus. Yes, I have no worth, but I am worthy in you because you have turned that around. Not just for me, but for the whole world around me. Then believe that he died on the cross and rose from the dead for the mistakes that you have made, to give you grace, to give you mercy, to give you worth. He rose from the dead so you can have eternity with God. Are you ready to get to know this God? I want to talk to you. I want to help you in that. Go to our website, BarbTV.org. Ask for prayer or even call me, 855-515-5550. And if you're not sure about this, this is what it says. Search me, O God, and this is a prayer you could say. Search me, O God, and know my heart. Try me and know my anxious thoughts, and see if there be any hurtful way in me, and lead me in the everlasting way. If you pray that prayer, God will turn it around, because he did it for me, and he will do it for you. 855-515-5550. And next week, is it possible when you have it all, you still have nothing? Have a great day.